Operator Syndrome, episode 42. I just said it. We were talking about it and I forgot it. This is 42. We're doing more listener questions. Seems to be a cadence we've developed. We
Yeah.
talk about ourselves selfishly for 2 episodes and then we do a listener question. I think that works for now. As long as you all have them, we'll keep answering as best we can. Remember, some of our information is outdated. So,
Yeah.
but as long as you keep that in mind, we're happy to try. And of course, if you have questions, email us operatorsyndromepodcast at gmail.com. So our first question here is from Tino. Tino is a former law enforcement officer who retired due to sustaining a physical injury. But Tino has a couple questions for us. The first one here, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but it's how do you describe the hardships you went through to troubled youth to help motivate and inspire them to think beyond themselves, think beyond, their own selfish motivations. How would you or how have you used your story, Steve, if you've done this to help motivate you this.
Yeah. Guess a number of things. I think, and a lot of times it comes through just honest questions that come from young people considering the military, considering special ops in the smaller orb of the military, and just trying to say I'm an average guy. Yeah, I'm not an all-American athlete. I had a loving family. Grown up in the heartland of Kentucky, and I when I joined, I couldn't swim. I mean, these are things I just throw out to give perspective because I think in our culture that we play all these cool games that are larger than life, and we see movies that are larger than life, The Rock, and all of these superhuman characters, and I just try um, to instill a little, hopefully inspiration, hopefully a little self-confidence to say, look, you don't have to be like superhuman to do really great stuff. It even goes back to jujitsu in some ways. Like, I was just talking to a lady locally. No, that it may not pertain to Tino's question directly, but this person was like, "Hey, what can I do to defend myself?" She was a woman who, she didn't have any martial arts background, and I said, "Well, let's talk. Let's talk about it. I can't train you to be Hickson Gracie overnight, but there are things you can do, and there's smart ways to play it." So I guess just on a very broad level, just to tell average people, you can be extraordinary, and it's not, as you know, Patrick, neither of us were all American athletes. We weren't superhuman in any sense, but we were part of a cause that I think almost makes you feel superhuman. You were in the Ranger Regiment, I was in the SEAL teams, and we look back on this with a huge amount of pride, maybe some regret, maybe some misgivings, but it doesn't matter. We did a good thing, and we did a good thing for our country, and we've both inspired people, not to say anything for ourselves, just that we're average guys, but with tenacity and with an ability to stand up and be realistic about things, you can go far. And so I would just encourage young people that the military is not for everybody, but it is a way forward, especially if you're coming from a financial disadvantage. You can get college, you may make a career out of it and be the next admiral or general. Who knows? But it can empower you, and a lot of that just comes from mentors who kick some discipline into you. We all, if you come from a good family like I did, like I had a super advantage. Patrick may feel the same. I had a good mom, a good dad. I knew I was loved. I got discipline, and so I already had an advantage. But sometimes maybe you don't come from that scenario, but the military can surely give you that. Just stay positive, circle yourself with positive people. There's always negative ones out there. Stay away. Go for the team players, the people who are, lighthearted and keep their heads up.
Yeah, that's great. A lot of what you said resonates with me, especially the last part. Because his question specifically about troubled youth.
Hmm.
Um, and I believe, I don't know if I read it right, but I think Tino might be doing some mentorship. It sounds like that
Yeah,
might be part of what he's doing. So, you know, you bring up a good point about the troubled part of the troubled youth. Um, the military is, and I don't know if Tino's guiding them towards the military, and they don't have to, right? That's not necessarily what we're saying, but pointing out that, when I went into the army, I was sort of average suburban kid who showed up, showed up. And when I got to basic training, it was a wide spectrum of folks from a lot of different backgrounds,
right.
you know. And there were quite a few guys there who did not have the background that I had. We're not as fortunate as me in many ways, you know, to have, strong family backgrounds and be, financially stable and all those type of things. So it was eye opening. But the military can and does provide a structure that some folks find missing. I could definitely see that some folks had, growing pains. I mean, we all do,
Hmm.
learning to cope with the military lifestyle. But you definitely saw where some folks had more trouble than others. But you hear all the time stories, or folks you meet later on in your career who had, troubled backgrounds, who really turned it, like the military really helped them turn it around.
Definitely.
Yeah. And again, it doesn't necessarily have to be the military, but there
Right.
seems to be some value in organizations that give some kind of structure that
Yeah.
helps.
Well, and I think too, exactly, uh, with law enforcement and with, say, a fire department
Yeah.
and the military, the one common feature, because part of Tino's question was to inspire you to see beyond yourself.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, day one, you're either going to learn to see beyond yourself and see the bigger picture, meaning your brothers next to the left and right of you, or it's not going to go well.
Hmm.
So yeah, those kinds of teams, maybe is the greatest way to say it, really does yank you out of yourself because you won't go far. And like I say, it's not a threat or an intimidation factor. It's just that that's the way it is. It's designed to be that way. And we all need to be yanked out of ourselves. I did, and I played football. I was part of team sports, but boy, the military pushes you to a level to see, oh, no Lone Rangers in this racket. We're together, and so that in itself is a good dynamic to pull you out of maybe selfishness or a tendency toward that.
Yeah, definitely. The team aspect is huge. Being able to rely on folks, um, and being able to trust folks, and you take so connected to what we said before. Learning that you can rely on folks that are not like you, that are
Mhm.
different from you, but you can band together in pursuit of a common goal, whatever that goal is. That's a big part. Community, I guess, in the end, right? So,
Yeah.
community helps. Friends help. Um, the second part of his question, just have you done have you done have you done any mentoring with like younger folks? I know you've spoken to vets, you've done some other things, but you ever worked with kids,
Um,
adolescents, teenagers, something like that?
yeah, not through a program like Big Brother or one of those
Mhm.
formally, but I have done that in I for this gets into our story maybe partially down the road. I taught school. I taught elementary for 2 years, and then middle school, and then high school for a year, for about a period of about 8 years, before I entered my doctoral studies and went on to university uh, education. And in those situations, I was always involved with sports. I coached a girls volleyball team, a seventh grade girls volleyball team, and then I I mentored kids like kind of informally. There was a kid that was really troubled. He was a gosh, he was like in third or fourth grade, and I saw he did not come from a great family. And I would go out and just because he was just restless and tense, and just always eating up with energy and nervous. I mean, a lot of anxiety. He probably didn't know what he was going home to at the end of the day. And I sensed this, and I could tell he was an athletic kid. I could tell he was bodily engaged. And I bought him a glove and a baseball. And I went out and I said, "Hey, let's take a 20-minute break and just throw this ball around." And man, it just, a simple thing like that made this kid just calm down. Moreover, I think I saw this early on. This kid was phenomenal at baseball, and he went on to be a star in high school. And I lost track of him because I moved on and moved out of the area. It wouldn't surprise me at all if he didn't play college ball. And I took up like an offering, an offering. Hey, anybody? I just went around to some of the teachers that knew him and I said, "Hey, can you give $10, $20? We're gonna get him some baseball gear, get him enrolled in a league." And I swear, I think it changed that kid's direction
Yeah.
because he saw something positive. And again, it's a team thing.
Yeah.
So there was one, but I guess more of my stuff has been kind of grassroots like that, just trying to feel my way.
I mean, that might be even like the most impactful, right?
Mhm.
Because I mean, um, programs like Big Brother, Big Sister, all those are fantastic.
Yeah,
Absolutely, no question about it. But you know, um, seeing in the moment a need, someone who needs help, and then reaching out to them, being in a position to reach out, that's huge.
right
That's
on.
awesome. Yeah, and I asked the question just because it's definitely different, and it'll help pivot towards Tino's second question. But kids are tough. We're both dads.
Yeah,
Uh, kids are a different animal. So, and the older I get, the more emotional I get
yeah.
about about hearing children who are having a tough time. So
Oh boy.
we'll move on before your story makes me tear up more. But
We're getting old and sappy. Just wait till you get to my age, Patrick. Oh boy.
so the next part of Tino's question is less about motivating or inspiring, or kind of, but more about accountability and more about your peers, accountability with your peers, which is really one of the tougher things anybody has to do, right? Is to look at a teammate or a coworker
Yeah.
or whatever, and have to bring up the fact that, hey, we're slipping here, because that's what we're talking about, right? So if you're talking about how do you bring up accountability with peers, it's because someone's slipping, someone's not doing the right thing, right?
Yeah.
Or collectively we could be doing better and we're not, and that could be a range of things. um
Yeah.
I think at the end of his note, he was kind of inferring that he was speaking about fellow law enforcement officers, although I might have been reading too much into that. But just generally accountability within the team. People are going to want to know what do the SEAL teams, how do they drive home accountability, with your peers.
Yeah. Well, it's a good one. These are getting into some heavier matters. I don't know. I feel like who am I to have a lot of advice because these are like majorly sage-like questions, but I'm just thinking of specific examples. One, I think that for me and the SEAL teams, and I learned this really early on. Uh, this is kind of a tangential anecdote, but I became a Christian. I mean, pretty serious about my faith early on in my first platoon. I wasn't, a, it was kind of a conversion experience toward the end of my first platoon, and it's bad enough to be a new guy in a SEAL platoon or in Ranger Regiment. You're going to get your um, you're going to get your fair share of grief. But to be, and looking back on it, I might not have been as mature. I mean, I wasn't mature. I was like 20 something and early 20s. Um, and I did not preach to people. I did not judge anybody else. It was just for me. I just wanted to pursue what I thought was a righteous path, right? What on whatever level that meant to me. But I got probably twice as much grief as just my other new guy friends in the platoon who were partying and just, I don't want to paint it too bad. I don't judge any of those guys. They were having fun. They were having a lot of fun. And we were in the Philippines, so you could have whatever you wanted for pretty cheap. I mean, you just let your mind wander into all the great ways you could have fun. It was there for the picking, and I just chose not to do it. And at first, it was really like, who do you think you are? So I'm going somewhere with this story, but then I just never talked about it. I said, hey, I'm going to have your back. I'm going to be the best operator in this platoon I can possibly be, and focus on what I could control, which was my performance, right? On the battlefield or on the shooting range or wherever we were. I'm going to make sure you're covered. I'm going to pack your parachute with the most attention to detail I possibly can, like it was my own. And believe it or not, that stuff resonated. It sunk in and people noticed. It didn't happen overnight. It was kind of a work of perseverance. But by the end of that platoon, people were like, well, say what you might want to say about Watkins. Yeah, he's a Christian. He reads his Bible, but damn good operator. He doesn't cut corners, and so I guess the long-winded way of what I'm saying, or trying to shorten it, is just to say you I don't see any other shortcut other than just serving as an example and letting people see your example and just being the best you can be, and then admitting when you're wrong, and just going, I screwed up, that was a bonehead thing I just did. I learned from it. Glad nobody got hurt. Hey, I'm welcome to the human race. And just be real, be honest. And so it's pretty basic on one level, as I see it. Accountability, that, and I'll kick it back to Patrick, and I'll maybe say something about that. But there were a couple times when I had to say a few things, but I think I had to develop a couple years of chops before I had the right to say things, because that's the way it is. You got to earn your own respect.
Yeah, I all that. I'll co-sign all of that. Especially when you're talking about your peers, and you're talking about accountability, you have to be doing the right thing first, right? You have to. You have to establish that
Always.
that you will hold yourself to the standard you expect of your peers, um, first and foremost, and that does require time. Um, you know, you can't go telling on folks,
No, no
right?
way, man.
Or you can't go whining to your peers. You can't go telling on your folks. Like, that's not the answer. Step one is, are you holding yourself to that same standard? Um, then when you think it's appropriate and you're going to talk to your peers, how are you coming at them?
Mm-hmm.
you know
Big time.
is it, because if it's from a position of superiority, you know that just doesn't work. That doesn't fly. uh, it doesn't fly in the units we were in, just because of the personalities. But that doesn't work on the out in the civilian world either. um so, you need to come from them from it needs to be more, it needs to be honest. It needs to
Mhm.
be, hey, I'm talking about this. Here's what I'm concerned because
Yeah.
XYZ reason. And the reasons that work the best is I'm worried about you. I'm worried
Hmm.
about us. It's a safety thing. It's for your health. It's for this. It's for that.
Hmm.
Anytime I've had to have those conversations. I've had to have those conversations with really close friends,
Yeah.
which is maybe even tougher to
Hmm.
say, hey, this, this worries me, this bothers me,
Hmm.
and come and talk to them about that. And then ultimately, kind of like you were saying, at the end of the day, you don't have control, and because his question was about working with peers, we won't talk about how you have to lead and establish accountability. We'll answer that some other day. but
Right.
in terms of peers, that's really all you got.
Yeah. Yeah. The posture, as Patrick was alluding to, the posture that you assume when you approach a teammate, a friend, is everything. You know, you want to come as a humble friend, as a teammate. You don't want to come as a judge or a high-handed, like, yeah, lord it over anybody. That's just going to backfire. And I don't know where that would come from anyway, just
Yeah.
with one's own attitude. Man, we're trying to help. It's huge. Yeah, I would always try to find a common ground when I did have to approach someone. And this happened to me, like Patrick said, it happened in his service, where I had to say, hey, bro. It was always, yeah. One thing I might mention, this may be obvious, but I would always be just one on one, away from you. Never in front of anybody. Never in front of the team. If it was a thing that you were concerned with that was just between, like, hey, I need to say something, it would always be very gentle and very man, I don't know. You don't want to blow smoke, and you don't want to be cloying or, you know, you know, yeah, blowing smoke. But you just direct and say, hey man, I'm just really concerned about this. And the best way is to just be honest, cut to the chase, and say, I might be wrong. Here's how I see it. I'd like to hear your thoughts. I'm here to talk if you want. If not, you can tell me to take a hike. But that posture is not one that's comes from on high. It's just very eye to eye, I think.
And it does one of the big takeaways also is that it does require you to talk to them. It
Mhm.
does, filing a complaint or going to the boss, like
Yeah.
that will never work. That'll, I mean,
No.
it'll do things.
Oh,
It'll
yeah.
make life. It'll change things. It'll change things in some ways, but I mean that's not going to work if you're looking for some real change. Um, Next question. I think we've talked about this before, but folks are interested, so maybe it's a good reminder. Um, maybe this is sort of a quicker one since we've talked about it before. But Steve was asking, what happens before phase 2 in buds after Hell Week? Because there's some time after
Yeah.
Hell Week, right? So what are you doing while you're recovering before you
Yeah.
start phase 2?
Yeah. There's about 3 weeks. Okay, so each phase is 8 weeks. Yeah. Hell week starts the end of the fourth full week. So you're at week 5 when you end Hell week. So and this is in my day, if it's
Yeah.
changed, please forgive me. So yeah, about 3 more weeks before second phase. Um, by and large, it is the first week after Hell Week, almost the entire week. I can't remember to the day. At least the first 3 days. Monday, they secure Hell Week. For my case, it was Saturday morning. So we got all Saturday, Sunday, and then back Monday, we were just in the classroom for the next, I think, 3 days straight. We didn't have to PT. We did have to. I can't even remember if they let us walk to chow. I think they might have let us walk to chow rather than shuffle, because we guys were suffering with stress fractures, feet were swollen. Hell, you couldn't even get your feet back in your boots for the first few days because of the water retention and the edema, the swelling that occurred. Um, but yeah, so that week following Hell Week was a lot of just letting you heal up. They went easy on us as far as physical, because yeah, we were broken. And then the last couple of weeks, they started to amp back up the runs. It was a lot of soft sand running, I remember, because of going easy on the bones. I mean, soft sand is a blessing and a curse. It's a curse because it sucks to run in, because it feels like you're in a dream running from a monster that you can't get away from because you go so slow. You sink down in this stuff. But it's a blessing because it's really soft on your bones and on your joints. So it is kind of a good way to run, if there is one. And then it was a lot of classroom stuff, honestly. I remember weapons, rudimentary weapons, how to break down an AR, some basic first aid, some basic navigation stuff they started to teach us. Now, second phase, we really hit that hard. Of course, for me in my time, second phase was land warfare. Now it's dive phase, but they're going to probably start prepping you on the stuff that's coming next. Swims, those are really good. We did a good number of swims. I think we might even have had a swim before we had a run, if I'm thinking about this right, because water is even more forgiving than running in sand. Um, we did some pool exercises. I think I can't remember what. It's been so long, man. Cut me some slack, man. It was 1988,
Nice.
87, 88. Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, just light stuff basically to just ramp it up, let your body heal. And it's not that long. I mean, 3 weeks. The first week is pretty much all soft stuff. And then it was, I would say, 50% classroom, 50% getting back into the rhythms of PT, obstacle course swims and runs. Um, that's what I can remember.
There you go. Well, that's a lot. That's a
Yeah.
lot. So you rest and then they keep you busy. It
Yeah.
sounds like that's the
Oh, yeah, they keep you busy. Yeah, for
keep you
sure.
busy. Um, okay. And then the last question we'll take for today is let me bring it up. Let me read it. This is from Bob. Bob
Yeah.
in Bob in Pennsylvania, friend of the show. Um, so his question was about the mission I talked about in detail um, from that fall 2007 deployment. His question, um, and uh, let me try to read it here. On that mission, it seems to me he had some very nice things to say. I appreciate that, Bob. On that mission, it seems to me as a non-military guy, like it was a very disproportionate allocation of resources to commit so many men and to expose them to so much risk for so long to chase one squirter. Um, understand if that guy was a high value target, but nobody knew anything about him except that he had run.
Yeah.
And then just sort of a general question. So that's more specific, and then sort of generally, just questioning how many men could have been killed and assets expended on missions like that. Was this kind of thing common in Afghanistan? And then looking back on it, do we think that was an appropriate use
Mm.
of resources? Great question. For for this specific case, um, ultimately, I do agree with what we did. It took a lot for sure, especially the way I tell the story. But and what happened. But the first off, the reason we were there, this wasn't a random house that we just happened to roll up on, and then some guy ran out and we chased after him. We had reasons to be there. There was intelligence that said, "Hey, we're pretty sure this is someone that's a bad guy, or related to a bad guy in some way, shape, or form." So that's the first thing, going there. The second piece was, I'm pretty sure I said this when I was retelling the story, but excuse me, but I believe we found uh, equipment on target that led us that confirmed this was a bad dude, or they were affiliated with nefarious activity, and so that especially interested us. Um, but ultimately, um, you know, chasing this person down and everything it took, we've said it before. Stories like that are interesting, but they are a clear sign that something or many things went very wrong. And
Mhm.
so, if the helicopter had a hard landing in the beginning that slowed us down, we probably catch this. We're
Yeah.
probably set up to catch this dude, and then it's not a thing, right? Um, no shade on the 160th. I don't blame you for that.
Yeah.
But so and at the end of the day, that's our job. Our job is to track down these people, because at the end, because you have to have your hands on them to find out what they know, and that's just the way it goes. Um, in terms of, so for that mission, in spite of everything we went through, not that I remember, or was even necessarily briefed on the treasure trove of information we got from this person. We were just happy to have survived it. But
Yeah.
that, that's just the job, and we're okay with that. Because we're gonna get our guy. That's what they have us around for. In terms of, in general, this idea of, and we've sort of talked about it before, even maybe in the last episode, started
Yes.
to talk around it. But this idea, you take a lot of well trained, well resourced folks to go after individuals. Um, I think part of that is how the military chooses to operate, and specifically how we choose to do these special operations raids. We want overmatch. We want overwhelming technology and personnel and everything. We want everything set up to ensure that we are successful, that we capture the person, and that we minimize risk to ourselves and whoever else is around. The more equal the fight is, the more likely people are um, interested in getting froggy, right? If people see that, this is just an overwhelming force, you hope that that has some psychological effects. Because again, like I said, it was capture kill for us. We want to capture you. We're not interested. We're not interested in just killing you. We want to
Right.
capture you and find out what you know. So, um, I'm generally okay with personally with how we chose to do business, um, but I can definitely see how some folks might think that it's a little much. I can definitely see that. And to be honest, there are plenty of times where we went to look for someone and we hit a dry hole. There's no one there. Like I've been to places that were completely empty, and yet here's a Ranger Strike Force surrounding the building, and you've got an AC-130 overhead and other kind of ISR assets, and you got fighter jets orbiting close by just in case something, all to hit an empty house
Yeah.
because someone thought a bad guy was there. Steve, what do you think?
Nope. I concur totally. I had a couple of thoughts. Don't you find it true? I mean, maybe nine times out of 10, generally true that when somebody's running, I mean, when somebody's taken off a squirter, hmm, they probably are running for a good reason. Whether it's not necessarily that they're a high value target, quote unquote, but they're up to some shenanigans that probably, and in this case, it seems like that played out. Whereas on conversely, don't you think 9 out of 10 times when people, either Afghans or Iraqis who are just, they're innocent, they're not involved, they're not militants, they're like, hey, I I'm cool. Yeah, there's exceptions, but
Sure. I default to our default being, well, we wouldn't have been sent on. One would think we
mhm,
weren't in support of a joint task force of the Joint Special Operations Command. For us, if we got sent out at night, we would like to think that the intelligence, again, we'd like to think that the intelligence that drove us to go there was of high enough quality to we could start to make some assumptions, right? It's like, I guess, if you're a cop, right? And if
yeah,
intelligence told you, hey, this house on the corner, that's a trap house. Like, we watch it, we know that drugs come in and out of there. It's a bad place. Go in there, grab up who's in there, and someone runs from it. You have a higher, you have a there, you've met a higher threshold for assuming that someone is perhaps involved in things they shouldn't be involved in.
right.
But I've been on targets where definitely where we ended up at the wrong place, and I have seen cases where people were very adamant that we were at the wrong place, and it sometimes it is a different vibe.
Yeah. Yeah, and the whole thing that Patrick's talked about more than once is that and this is from Iraq and Afghanistan, but it was the same in the Gulf War. If we could avoid an engagement, by all means, we would. If we could accomplish an objective, and many times, the Iraqis that we encountered were they were in the process of surrendering. They didn't want to get in a firefight. Now we were more than happy to oblige them. I mean, nobody wants to be in a firefight. I always say the enemy gets a vote. So if we can sort this out without exchanging bullets, great. It's funny, just one aside I was thinking about is that it's always in retrospect, it's always when a tragedy occurs that you start that these questions come up, and they certainly do. And I've asked them many times. So it's not, it's just what happens because we love our nation, we love our boys and girls in uniform, and and when we see a tragedy, we go, "Holy hell! How could this have been avoided?" You know, who screwed up? Whose bad idea was this? And I'm mixed about that because I was involved with one of a huge mass casualty that just seems senseless on so many levels. But it also is just I mean, I was cringe saying this, but it's part of the job. We signed up for this. We know when we go out and at any given time, we could take a bad turn. I mean, the enemy gets a vote. And but on a positive note, it is incredible to me in my community and those that I was familiar with in Patrick's, it is incredible how many hornet's nests we went into night after night after night, and how relatively few catastrophes we had. Not to take anything away from one individual who was killed or maimed in combat, but I just can't believe it. And it's just like, I mean, I kind of swell with pride. Maybe it's Veterans Day. It was a couple of days ago, but it's just like, holy cow. It is great that, given so much chaos and the battlefield is just pure chaos, that we don't take more.
Yeah, there. I mean, for the mission set we were executing, it was we did everything in our power to control and to be safe.
Mm-hmm.
Um, especially during my time, you know, it seemed to me that being in a conventional, if you were in a conventional army or armor unit at some combat outpost somewhere, that seemed way more dangerous to me, honestly, than what we were doing. We go out, yeah, we go out every night, and we do put in good work, but I did not want to be some guy in some outpost. So, bless them and what they went
Yeah.
through and that stuff. Um,
Watch Restrepo. If you want to get a glimpse of that, man, those guys are total heroes.
uh, that's it for this one. Thank you all. We'll catch you in the next one.